Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another review. This is a horror film from Spain, Spanish language English subs, released in the year 2011, directed by Jaime Balaguero, and this film is called Sleep Tight. And the story to Sleep Tight is as follows. An embedded concierge at a Barcelona apartment building plots to make one happy-go-lucky resident completely miserable in his psychological thriller from Rec co-director Jaime Balaguero. Cesar is a wretched man who subsists on the pain of others. Though the residents rarely take notice of him, Cesar observes every intimate detail of their lives, seizing at the first signs of optimism and cheerfulness. Carefree tenant Clara is far too perky for Cesar. The happier she gets, the deeper the doorman sinks into despair. In order to be happy, Cesar realizes Clara will have to suffer. Though at first Cesar's plan to torment Clara from afar goes off without a hitch, things start to fall apart when the scheming doorman gets far too confident for his own good. Just as Clara begins to suspect that her curious bad luck streak may be coming to an end, however, Cesar summons all of his strength and resentment to deliver one last devastating blow. So Cesar is a concierge at a Barcelona apartment complex, and he's a very bitter and twisted man. Very unhappy, and he's very suicidal. So the only happiness he gets from his life is to make other people as miserable as he is. So he sets his sights on his victim, Clara, who's a beautiful young woman, who is the complete opposite of Cesar. She's very optimistic, and she's smiling all the time, and this really disturbs Cesar. So Cesar starts to plot her downfall. He wants to make her miserable in order to feel good about himself. So these strange events start happening, and Clara is the victim of them. So to Cesar's disappointment, Clara is still remaining optimistic. She sees it as just bad luck, and that her bad luck is going to change soon, and that she's going to keep the smile. So this infuriates Cesar, and he goes to great lengths in order to try and make her miserable, and things just escalate, and as a result, her life is in grave danger without her knowing, because Cesar is very smart in what he does, and he's staying in the shadows. So if you want to know how the movie unfolds and if Cesar is successful in trying to do what he wants, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the film. If you're familiar with Jaime Balaguero, The Nameless was his very first film. It's atmospherically brilliant. Then he went something completely different when he co-directed the first two Rec films, and he's actually making the last Rec film on his own, so that gives me hope, because Rec 3 was crap. But the first two Rec films he was part of, and I thought they were very different. From The Nameless, you've got atmospheric, and then Rec 1 and 2 were very fast-paced, breakneck speed, panic-stricken, just really insane horror films, and very scary horror films. But the thing that impressed me the most is that The Nameless and the Rec series are completely different from each other. So this one is more similar to The Nameless. So if you're expecting something like Rec, you're going to be disappointed. This is more of a slower, atmospheric film rather than a fast-paced, film like Rec. So it does show you that this guy has a wide variety in his repertoire as a horror director, and that's something I really appreciate, and that's why he is fast becoming one of my favourite horror directors. So this movie, I don't think it's as good as Nameless, but it's still a very, very memorable experience, because atmospherically it is absolutely superb. Now, the movie does centre around happiness and sadness. On one case, you've got Cesar, who is very unhappy, and then you've got Clara, who's very happy. So I really like the fact that it's black and white. It really is a case of what happens when sadness clashes with happiness, and how destructive that can be. And as a result, it becomes a very depressing film, because one man's actions can threaten the whole life of someone else. And I thought, while it was very scary, at the same time it's very touching and very depressing. So it actually has quite a bit of emotion in it, and that's something that really surprised me. And as I said, that's something very similar to The Nameless. The Rec series were more fun, but then you've got The Nameless and this one that are much more serious, and that hide a little bit of emotion underneath the horror sort of surface that it actually has. Luis Tosar, who plays Cesar, is the reason why the film works, and the reason why the film is very memorable. He's both very sympathetic and very, hateful kind of man. You can sympathise with his situation, you feel really sorry for him, he's suicidal, but the things that he decides to do because he's envious of a happy lifestyle, you kind of hate him for that. So you're torn in between whether you like him or you hate him, and that gives him a very real approach. He's not just a complete black and white sort of monster, in that you hate him, and you're just barracking for the good guy. But this movie, it really shows you as a real man. He's got a likable quality to him. Although you don't condone what he's doing, you can understand why he's doing it. So it becomes very real, and as a result of that, very scary. So Luis Tosar, who played Cesar, he does an absolutely magnificent job. This guy is a very, very good actor, and it needed a very good performance in order to pull it off. And Jaime Balaguero gets the best out of Luis Tosar. I thought he's one of the most interesting villains in a very long time. And as I said, you don't know whether to hate him or to like him. And then you've got the woman who played Clara. Now, Clara is one of the film's downfalls. Now, yes, she does a very good job, but she's very, very happy, which was good because, as I said, it's contrasting to the unhappiness of César. But the problem is, you don't really get to know too much about Clara. You know that she's happy, you know that she's got a lot going for her, but you don't really have any depth to her. You've got all the depth to César, but you don't have a lot of depth to Clara. Therefore, when the bad things start happening, you don't really care if she comes out of this in one piece or not. And that's where the film kind of kind of drawn back a little bit. The problem with the movie as well is that Jaime Balaguero, although it's a lot of sustained suspense, and as far as suspense is concerned, this is a fantastic film. But the problem is, he doesn't really have any patience to build it up. You're thrust into a very disturbing image straight from the start, and this is where you know what César is capable of. Whereas I would have liked to have a little bit more insight into César's story, maybe a little bit more insight into Clara, and that as the movie progresses, the disturbing element sort of escalates. But because the first sort of frame of the movie, it shows you what César is capable of, kind of takes the gloss off the character development a little bit. Kind of gives it a horror movie feeling rather than a realistic sort of thriller portrayal. And that's something that a lot of low attention seekers will appreciate. You know, it does get into the action straight away, and it does maintain the level of terror, and it does escalate to a very rewarding experience. But I thought that if you got the opportunity to know Clara a little bit more before the bad things start happening, then you would have given it a little bit more emotion than it actually had. Yeah, yes, it did have emotion, but mainly because of César rather than Clara. And when the bad things start happening, you kind of feel that, you know, Clara is a victim, but Clara is just sort of a cardboard cutout because she really didn't portray a very rich sort of person. And that's, as I said, that is why the film sort of suffers a little bit and is not as good as The Nameless. So the gore is there, but it's few and far between. So if you're expecting a gore fest, then look away, because it really shows you how good Jaime Balaguero actually is, because he's not just a one-trick pony, and he really does have a strong resemblance to Alfred Hitchcock. Because of the tension, the atmosphere. Just the way that the movie is shot, it really speaks in itself, and that's what I liked about it the most. But as I said, just the level of attention to Clara would have made the film a little bit more in-depth, and just because of the fact that you're thrust straight into it, and although it does maintain that sort of level of terror, I would have liked it if it had a little bit more of a slower start. You know the characters, but you just don't know exactly what César is capable of until the later stages, rather than knowing what he's capable of straight away. Therefore, you get a level of terror towards him, but not really so much a level of realism, if you know what I mean. Just the fact that you can sympathize with him first, and then fear him later, that would have been a little bit better in my eyes. But having said that, it's still a very memorable film, and it is a film that I am going to recommend. It is quite depressing, has a little bit more emotion than you think it would have, so it's a little bit more than just a standard horror film, but I couldn't help but feel that it could have been a lot more. So after all that, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a very, very rewarding experience, and once again it shows why Jaime Balaguero is one of the leaders as far as horror directors are concerned. So memorable experience, but it does come with its problems. But having said that, I would still recommend it. So that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.